Were early humans great explorers? The short answer is yes. They were the greatest explorers in the history of life on Earth. Not in the way we think of explorers today, with flags and ships and corporate sponsors. Their explorations weren't single, glorious missions, they were slow, generational movements. They were driven by hunger, by climate, by fear, and by something else. Something like curiosity. The entire peopled world is the map they made. Their journeys are the reason we are everywhere. To understand this, we need to forget about heroic individuals. The story of human exploration isn't about one person. Well, it's about countless small groups, a family maybe, or a few families. They moved over a hill to see a new valley. They followed a river to find where it went. They did this for 2 million years. And over that time, they walked out of Africa and settled the planet. It all started with a simple revolutionary act: standing up. Before we were explorers, we were apes in the forest, we lived in trees. Our world was vertical, but Africa was changing. The climate grew drier, the great forests began to shrink. They gave way to open savanna, grasslands with patches of trees. This new landscape presented a problem and an opportunity to survive out in the open. Our ancestors did something radical. They stood up on 2 legs and started walking. Bipedalism. It seems so basic to us now, but it changed everything. Walking on 2 feet is incredibly efficient for covering long distances. A chimpanzee gets tired walking a few miles. A human can walk all day. Bipedalism freed our hands. We could carry things, tools, food, children. Our hands were now free to explore the world in a new way, to manipulate it, to create. This was the first critical tool for exploration. An efficient body, a body built for endurance. Our early ancestors, the Australopithecines, were walkers. They roamed the savannas of East Africa. They weren't traveling the globe yet. But they were moving. They were expanding their territories. They were learning to read the landscape. Where to find water, which plants were safe to eat, where predators lurked. This was exploration on a local scale, but it laid the foundation. Then came a new kind of human. The Homo habilis, the handyman, they appeared around 2.5 million years ago. Their brains were a little bigger. And they did something no animal had done before in quite the same way. They intentionally made stone tools. They would find a good rock and strike it with another. They would knock off sharp flakes. These flakes were simple, but they were a key that unlocked a new world of food. With a sharp stone flake, you could slice through an animal's hide. You could cut meat from bone. You could smash bone to get at the rich marrow inside. This was huge. Our ancestors were probably not great hunters yet. They were likely scavengers. They would wait for a lion to finish a kill, then rush in and grab what they could. Stone tools made this possible. They could butcher a carcass quickly and carry the meat away to safety. This new diet, rich in fat and protein, fueled the growth of our most important exploratory organ, the brain. Brains are expensive. They consume a lot of energy. The meat and marrow diet provided that energy. And a bigger brain meant better problem solving. It meant better memory for mapping out the landscape. It meant better social coordination. All essential skills for an explorer. The stage was set for the first great wave of human expansion. This wasn't our species, Homo sapiens. This was a much earlier ancestor, Homo erectus. The upright man. They show up in the fossil record around 2 million years ago. And they were different. Homo erectus was a game changer. They were taller, with long legs and a body shape much like our own. They were built to walk and run across vast distances. Their brains were significantly larger than those of Homo habilis. And their tools were more advanced. They created the Acheulean hand axe, a teardrop-shaped, symmetrical tool. It was the Swiss Army knife of the Paleolithic. They could use it to chop wood, butcher animals, dig for roots. It was a versatile, effective piece of technology. And with this new body, new brain, and new toolkit, Homo erectus did something astonishing. They walked out of Africa. This wasn't a planned migration. There was no committee meeting where they decided to colonize the world. It was a slow, unplanned diffusion. A group would move into a new valley, their children would grow up, and some of them would move into the next valley over. Over thousands of generations, this slow creep added up to a journey of thousands of miles. Why did they leave? There was no single reason. Climate change was a constant pressure. Ice ages came and go. Africa's climate fluctuated wildly. Sometimes it was wet, sometimes it was a desert. These shifts would have pushed populations to move, to follow the resources. Following herds of animals was likely a big part of it. The animals they hunted were moving, so they moved with them. Population pressure was another factor. Even with low population densities, a successful group would grow. Eventually, an area could not support everyone. Some people would have to leave to find their own territory. Maybe it was younger individuals forced out by their elders. Maybe it was social conflict. We can't know the exact social dynamics, but the outcome is clear on the fossil record. Around 1.8 million years ago, we find evidence of Homo erectus in Dmanisi in the country of Georgia. This is a remarkable site. The Dmanisi fossils are some of the oldest hominins found outside of Africa. And they are surprising. Their brains were relatively small, on the lower end for Homo erectus. Their tools were simple, more like the older Oldowan tools than the more advanced hand axes. This tells us something important. The first human explorers didn't need giant brains or super advanced technology. They needed to be good enough. They needed the ability to walk long distances. They needed to be able to eat meat. And they needed to be adaptable. The journey out of Africa wasn't a single event, but a long process. And it seems to have started earlier with more primitive hominins than we once thought. From the Caucasus they spread. Homo erectus pushed east across Asia. We find their remains in Indonesia, the famous Java man. We find them in China, Peking man. They adapted to a huge range of environments. From the warm tropics of Southeast Asia to the cooler, temperate climates of northern China. Each new environment was a puzzle to be solved. What could you eat here? What predators did you need to watch out for? Where could you find shelter? Where was the best stone for making tools? This was exploration as a process of learning. Each generation passed its knowledge to the next. They built up a mental map of the world, a library of survival skills for different landscapes. And they seem to have controlled fire. The evidence is debated, but it seems likely that Homo erectus was using fire at least 1 million years ago. Fire was another revolutionary tool. It provided warmth, allowing them to survive in colder climates. It offered protection from predators at night. It changed their diet. Cooking food makes it easier to digest and unlocks more nutrients. It also kills parasites, and fire creates a social center, a place to gather, to share food, to work on tools. The campfire was the first living room. It was a place where social bonds were strengthened, and knowledge was shared. For over 1.5 million years, Homo erectus and their descendants were the dominant humans on the planet. They were the original pioneers. They proved that a walking ape from Africa could survive almost anywhere. But they weren't the only explorers. The world of Middle Pleistocene humans was complex, with several different species living at the same time. In Europe, a new kind of human evolved, the Neanderthals. They descended from hominins who had left Africa long before us. We often have a cartoonish image of Neanderthals, dumb, brutish cavemen. That picture is completely wrong. The Neanderthals were the great explorers and masters of Ice Age Eurasia. Their exploration was not about expanding into new continents. It was about mastering one of the harshest environments on Earth. For hundreds of thousands of years, they thrived in a Europe that was locked in a cycle of ice ages. They lived in a world of mammoths, woolly rhinos, and cave bears. They were expert hunters. They had to be. They developed sophisticated hunting techniques, using wooden spears with stone points to take down huge animals. This required incredible planning, cooperation, and bravery, and they were supremely adapted to the cold. Their bodies were short and stocky, which helps conserve heat. Their noses were large, perhaps to warm and moisten the cold, dry air. They made complex tools known as the Mousterian tool culture. They knew their territory intimately. They knew the migration routes of the animals. They knew where to find the best flint for their tools. They knew which caves offered the best shelter. This is a different kind of exploration. Not the exploration of distance, but the exploration of depth, of deeply understanding and adapting to a challenging home. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. They had culture. They cared for their sick and elderly. We have found Neanderthal skeletons of individuals who had debilitating injuries but lived for years afterward. They could only have survived if their group cared for them. They buried their dead. This suggests they had some form of ritual, some sense of a world beyond the everyday. Meanwhile, in Asia, another group of human explorers was on the scene, the Denisovans. We know much less about them. For a long time, all we had was a single finger bone and a couple of teeth found in a cave in Siberia. But from that tiny bone, scientists extracted a full genome, and it told an incredible story. The Denisovans were a sister group to the Neanderthals. They had split off from a common ancestor. But their range was immense. Their DNA shows up in modern human populations all across Asia and Oceania, from Siberia to the Philippines to Australia. They must have been incredible explorers and adapters. They lived in the frigid Altai Mountains of Siberia. but they also lived in the warm tropics. And recently, a jawbone found on the Tibetan Plateau was identified as Denisovan. This means they had adapted to life at high altitudes over 10,000 feet, an environment with low oxygen that is incredibly challenging. They were the true explorers of Asia, so by about 100,000 years ago, the world was populated by a diverse cast of human explorers. Homo erectus might have still been around in parts of Indonesia. Neanderthals ruled Europe and Western Asia, and Denisovans covered the vast expanse of East Asia, and in Africa, a new species had emerged. Use Homo sapiens. For a long time, we were just one more kind of human. We lived in Africa. We used tools that weren't so different from those of Neanderthals, but then something happened. Around 70,000 years ago, things began to change. We see a flowering of art, of symbolism. We see more complex tools, bone tools, harpoons, needles. We see evidence of long-distance trade. It's sometimes called the cognitive revolution. We don't know exactly what caused it. Maybe a small genetic mutation changed the wiring of our brains. Whatever the cause, the result was a new kind of human mind. A mind that could think in abstract, symbolic ways. This was our secret weapon. We developed complex language. We could communicate detailed information about the world. Not just look out, a lion. But yesterday I saw lion tracks by the river bend. We should hunt there tomorrow morning, coming from downwind. Our language allows for complex planning and cooperation on a scale no other animal could manage. It also allows for something else, fiction. We could tell stories, we could create myths, gods, laws. These shared stories could unite huge numbers of people. A Neanderthal group was probably limited to about 150 individuals, the number of people you can know personally. Homo sapiens could create a shared identity, a tribe, a nationwide, that could bind thousands of strangers together. This new cognitive toolkit sparked the final and most dramatic wave of human exploration. Around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, a small group of Homo sapiens walked out of Africa. They were not the first to leave, but this time it was different. When they encountered other human species, like the Neanderthals and Denisovans, they didn't just coexist. They replaced them. We don't know exactly how. Maybe it was through violence. Maybe we were better at competing for resources. Maybe we just had more babies. It was probably a combination of all of these. We do know that we interbred with them. Many humans today carry a small amount of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA. We carry the ghosts of these other explorers inside us. Our species spread with breathtaking speed. We moved along the coast of Asia. The coastlines would have been rich in resources: fish, shellfish, seabirds. It was a reliable food source that allowed for rapid movement. And then we did something truly extraordinary. We reached Australia. Getting to Australia around 50,000 years ago was not a simple walk. Even during ice ages, when sea levels were much lower, there were always large stretches of open water separating Asia from the Australian continent. To cross this, people needed boats. Not just a log, but a seaworthy vessel. They needed to navigate. They had to have the idea to intentionally cross the water to reach a land they could see in the distance. This was a new kind of exploration. It wasn't just following herds or slowly expanding into the next valley. It was a planned, deliberate act of exploration. It required imagination and courage. These were the first true mariners. When they arrived in Australia, they entered a whole new world. A continent with a bizarre collection of animals. Giant kangaroos, marsupial lions, huge flightless birds. They had to learn how to survive in this new land, how to hunt these new animals. And they did. Within a few thousand years, they had spread across the entire continent, from the tropical north to the cold, dry south of Tasmania. At the same time, other groups of Homo sapiens were pushing into the rest of Asia and up into Europe. In Europe, they met the Neanderthals. For a few thousand years, the two species lived on the same continent. But the Neanderthals were fading. By about 40,000 years ago, they were gone. We, the newcomers from Africa, were now the masters of Europe. We painted stunning images of animals deep inside caves. We carved intricate figures from mammoth ivory. Our symbolic world was exploding. The final frontier was the Americas. It was the last great landmass to be settled by humans. To get there, explorers had to cross from Siberia into Alaska. During the last ice age, sea levels were so low that a land bridge, called Beringia, connected the two continents. But it was not an easy place to live. It was a cold, windswept world, a polar desert. The people who crossed into this land had to be masters of cold weather survival. They needed sophisticated clothing made from animal skins and sewn together with bone needles. They needed effective hunting techniques to take down the large animals of the tundra, like mammoths and bison. And they needed well-designed shelters. They were Arctic specialists. Sometime around 15,000 years ago, they made it past the giant ice sheets that covered Canada. And then they exploded south. The Americas were a new world full of animals that had never seen human hunters before. The explorers moved fast, incredibly fast. In what might have been just 1 or 2,000 years, humans spread from Alaska all the way to the southern tip of South America, Tierra del Fuego. It was one of the most rapid and successful colonization events in human history. With the settlement of the Americas, our species had done it. We had populated every continent except Antarctica. A walking ape that evolved on the savannas of Africa had, through millions of years of slow, halting, and then rapid exploration, made the entire planet its home. So what drove them? It's easy to say it was just about survival. Follow the food. Escape the bad weather. Run from your enemies. And all of that is true. Those were the primary engines of this expansion. But I don't think that's the whole story. There seems to be something else built into us. A restlessness, a curiosity, the desire to know what is on the other side of the mountain. Perhaps it was an evolutionary advantage. The groups that were more curious, more willing to take risks and explore new territories, were more likely to find new resources and survive when things got tough at home. Those who stayed put might have perished when the climate changed or their food source disappeared. So a wanderlust gene, or at least a predisposition for exploration, might have been selected for over thousands of generations. Think about the psychology of it. For a small band of hunter-gatherers, the known world was safe. The unknown world was dangerous. It had new predators, new poisonous plants, maybe hostile groups of other humans. To leave the familiar and step into the unknown takes a special kind of mindset. It takes a balance of caution and courage. It takes an ability to learn quickly and adapt. And for our species, Homo sapiens, it also took imagination. The ability to envision a different place, a better place. The ability to tell stories about it, to convince your family and your group to come with you on a dangerous journey. The exploration of the physical world was tied to the exploration of the world of the mind. The legacy of these early explorers is everywhere. It's in the diversity of human cultures around the globe, each one a unique solution to the puzzle of living in a particular place. It's in our DNA, which tells the story of these ancient migrations. It's in our very nature. We are the descendants of the ones who were never satisfied with the horizon, the ones who had to see what was next. This process didn't stop with the settlement of the continents. It continued with the Polynesians, who used breathtaking navigation skills to settle the vast Pacific Ocean. It continued with the Age of Sail, when European explorers connected the entire world into a single global system. And it continues today as we look to the moon and Mars. But it's important to remember the nature of that original exploration. It wasn't about fame or fortune. It wasn't about conquest in the way we think of it now. It was about life. It was about finding a new home for your children. It was a journey made on foot, one step at a time, over thousands of lifetimes. Were early humans great explorers? They were more than great. They were the originals. Their footsteps are the paths that led to all of us. The entire story of humanity is a story of a journey that began with a single step in an African savanna and has not ended yet.